Back in 2019, it was a chilly Friday night in January, and I'd just wrapped up work feeling dead tired. Cooking was the last thing on my mind, so I thought, hey, why not try one of those food delivery apps everyone's talking about? I snagged the first one that popped up, made an account, and placed an order from a nearby restaurant. While I waited for my meal, I flicked on Netflix to chill. That night, snow blanketed the ground, making everything icy and tricky. The app estimated a 20-minute delivery time, but with the snow messing up the roads, I figured it'd likely take longer, maybe even double. I sat around for a while, growing impatient. I was just about to cancel the order when the delivery guy messaged me. He said he couldn't find my place and asked for my personal phone number. I was a bit unsure if it was normal for them to ask that, but I thought, why not, and gave it to him. 10 minutes later, instead of a call, I got a text from the guy saying he'd be at my door in 10 minutes with the food. That was kind of weird, considering I thought he'd need to call for better directions, but I brushed it off. Another 10 minutes passed, and he texted again, saying he'd left the food on my doorstep. I dashed out to grab it and shot him a text to say thanks, thinking that was that. However, around midnight, the delivery guy messaged me again. This time, he said he liked my sweatshirt. That freaked me out a bit because it seemed like he watched me pick up the food. I played it cool and just said, thanks. He kept texting me after that, asking about my night and what I was up to. I didn't want to talk to a stranger, so I didn't respond. The next morning was a bit of a shock. I woke up to a flood of texts and missed calls from the same number. It was the delivery guy again. The last text was sent at 3 in the morning. Scrolling through the texts, 2 of them really spooked me. One said he was outside my house, and the other mentioned not being able to see much through my window due to the darkness. That wasn't the worst part, though. When I stepped outside, I spotted footprints in the snow that definitely weren't there before. It meant the guy had actually shown up at my place and wandered around outside. I got seriously creeped out, so I moved out of there and never heard from that number again. But then the police got involved. They took it super seriously, asking me tons of questions about the messages and the delivery app. They said they were looking into it but didn't have many leads. I told them everything I could remember, and they promised to investigate further. It made me nervous that someone could track me down like that, just from a food delivery app. After that whole ordeal, I swore off using any of those apps ever again. It was just way too creepy for comfort. Before I continue to the next story, if you are interested in earning from YouTube without showing your face or without making videos by yourself using artificial intelligence, like the video that you are watching right now, then I have a special free training for you. Check the first link in the description below to get instant access. Working late nights at Domino's was tough. Especially those shifts running from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. My boss knew I had free time since I was taking a break from college, so he always put me on these late-night shifts. There were always at least 3 of us, someone cooking, someone taking orders, and someone making deliveries. One Saturday, Jeff, this grumpy Italian guy, was cooking. He always seemed to be in a bad mood. Around 2:30 in the morning, he asked me to take a delivery. It was for 2 pizzas to an address on Crocker Drive, or something like that. I drove my old 2002 Honda Civic, which was barely holding together. As I drove down the road, leaving the only main road in our small town, it got super dark. No street lights, just the light from my car's headlights. I turned onto a dirt road marked with a sign that said private property. That's when things went south. I heard a loud bang, my car started wobbling, and I realized I had a flat tire. Great, just what I needed. The house I was delivering to wasn't too far, so I decided to go there and ask for help. The house was like most around here, average size, hidden behind trees. I rang the bell, and this regular-looking guy answered. I gave him the pizzas, told him about my tire trouble, and he seemed concerned. He came out to check my car, said he could help, and went back inside to grab his tools. but as I walked down his road, I noticed something strange, a spike strip. I pretended not to see it, went back, and got in my car. I reversed carefully, avoiding the spike strip. When I glanced back, I saw the guy chasing after me. I had to speed away, even though I knew my tire was taking a beating. Back at Domino's, Jeff and another coworker listened in shock as I explained why I was late. Jeff told me to drive home slowly, considering I lived nearby. I sat in my car, feeling relieved to leave that place behind. But as I drove, I noticed a car without its lights on following me. I pulled over, and it did the same, making me panic. I had a bad feeling it might be the same guy from the delivery. I called the cops, shaking with fear. They arrived, but when I pointed out the car, it peeled out and sped away into the night. The cop chased after without a word. I couldn't follow, my tire was shot. When I got home, I parked my car and hoped the cops caught that person. I quit the job 2 months later. After that night, I always watched my back when driving home. You never know what could happen out there. As for the police investigation, they came to Domino's to gather information about the incident. They took notes and asked me questions about the delivery and what had happened. I gave them all the details I could remember, from the address to the strange behavior of the guy at the house. Later, they called me in for a formal statement. I went to the station and sat down with an officer. I recounted the entire story, explaining the spike strip, the chase, and the fear I felt. They assured me they were looking into it and would do everything they could to track down the person responsible. I never heard much after that. The cops didn't update me on the case. I don't know if they caught the guy or what happened next. But I was just relieved to have gotten out of that scary situation and to never have encountered that guy again. When I first signed up for DoorDash, I was super curious to see if it was really as good as they advertised. It took me a whole month to build up the courage to take on my first delivery. But after that, I was hooked. Doing a couple of deliveries a day, I started seeing some really good results. A few months down the line, I made a big decision. I quit my job at the grocery store to dash every single day after school and most weekends. I was hustling hard to make those deliveries and earn some cash. One particular night, it was during a holiday weekend, and I was working extra late. From 8 p.m. until 2 a.m., I was zooming back and forth from the 24/7 McDonald's. I remember feeling exhausted but also kinda excited cause the orders were just pouring in. At around 2 in the morning, I received another order from McDonald's. It was set to be delivered at some warehouse. The delivery instructions were a bit odd, asking me to go in through the side doors and drop it off at the front desk. When I arrived at the warehouse, it was eerie. The parking lot was huge but mostly empty, just a few semi-trucks parked here and there. The building itself looked really old, just a big rectangular structure with a few windows and a single door at the front. It gave off this creepy vibe in the dead of night. I checked the instructions again to make sure I had to deliver through the side door, then parked my car. The side door was this heavy metal thing with a small glass window. I peered through the window, but because of the glare from my car's headlights, it was hard to see anything inside. As I swung the door open, I was hit by how dark it was inside. There was only this tiny wall light in the corner that barely lit up the entrance. I strained my eyes to see down the corridor, but it was so dark, I couldn't even see the end of it. It felt like walking into a black hole. I tried calling the customer for confirmation, and that's when things got spooky. The phone rang from the other end of the hallway, twice, getting closer each time. I quickly placed the food down. A figure started emerging from the darkness, but they didn't say a word. I panicked, feeling like something was off and I had to get out of there fast. I dashed out of the door, practically ran to my car, and drove off. Just before I sped away, I caught sight of movement behind the small glass window on the door. The whole thing had me feeling jittery, so I decided to call it a night and went straight home. I tried to brush it off as just a weird situation. However, a couple of days later, while I was out driving for deliveries, I got a call from the police. They asked me why I was at that specific warehouse at 2:30 a.m. on a Saturday. Apparently, there was security footage of my car pulling up. I explained that I was a DoorDash driver and showed them the delivery receipt. The police then informed me about what happened at the warehouse. The workers returned after the holiday weekend to find the delivery sitting in the middle of the dark hallway. Someone had used a fake account to order food but didn't take it. It seemed they were after something else. It was a creepy revelation. I shuddered at the thought of what could have happened if I had stayed there any longer. The police were investigating the break-in and the mysterious circumstances surrounding the order. I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease for days. It made me realize how dangerous things could get, even during what seemed like a routine delivery. It was a chilling experience, and it made me more cautious about where I made my deliveries late at night.